Hello. There's always a 90-second period. I'm glad you put in how to say your name because I'm going to use that so much. Sunaina.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go. Dyslexic. I would definitely struggle, but there's a 90-second period where I let people join. So if you are there, please say hello, say hi to us. If you have any questions, please ask. I've got a few, but viewer questions are always better than mine. So yeah, please ask and fire away, because they're probably the questions that need to be answered probably more than mine. But yeah, we'll give it kind of 45 seconds and we'll get into it. Happy with that?
I'm very happy with that.
The best thing about this is that I think I say this in every single podcast, is that this doesn't get edited and this goes on Spotify like this. So the first 90 seconds of all my Spotify podcasts, you just need to skip.
Okay.
Because ultimately it is just mumbling. I like a bit of a ramble. I like a little bit of a kind of starter. It just gives people a bit of time to join. I think that's important.
Absolutely, but also noted because so you may have disruption from my African grey parrot, and I've actually had people reach out to say, is it you and the parrot speaking today? So he has this thing of showing up right on the dot. So he's been doing his own thing, and now I can hear him outside the door. So sorry, not sorry, because he can be quite entertaining.
You should have had him here so we can see him talking as well.
Oh no. He would get no work done. He is so much fun.
Should we get into this?
Let's do it.
So welcome everybody. If you are here, as I said, please say hello. Got a really interesting conversation today around intersectionality, DEI, the role of leadership, and also supporting leadership as well, with Sunaina. I will get it right without having to kind of spell it out phonetically. I will get it right.
Homework before this.
I should have. Yeah, I'll just say it for half an hour to see if I can get it right. But yeah, really interesting. It's going to be a really interesting topic, and I think it's something which workplaces are still trying to find their feet. I mean, DEI has been a challenge for organisations for a while, and I think people are still struggling to get it right. And I think we're going to look at that and figure out actually what some of the key parts we can do to support people, right?
Absolutely.
So before I get you to introduce yourself and say your name correctly, I will introduce myself and get that bit out of the way, because it all becomes about you, which is the most important part. Hello, everybody. My name is Rich. I am a high-performance executive coach, leadership performance coach, a wellbeing coach, and sports coach, and the founder of Employees Health. Employees Health is a workplace wellbeing company, helping organisations create happier and healthier workplaces. So yeah, kind of two different branches of what I do. If you'd like to know a bit more about either of those, best way to do it is just drop me a line, and I can give you a bit of guidance about how I help and how I support companies. So that's me done. Now on to the important part. Sunaina, can you please give me an introduction? Tell me who you are, what you do, etc., etc.
Absolutely, thank you. So my name is Sunaina, as you can see there. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the founder of The Human Difference. The Human Difference is a global diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy. We have over 15 years of experience delivering in-house to clients across markets, across geographies, across sectors. It's very interesting, diverse work. I personally, my sweet spot is as an inclusion strategist. I'm busy disrupting DEI and how organizations are doing DEI. And yeah, we're enjoying it. We work with any size business. So long as you have people and you are well intended, it doesn't matter where you are on the journey, we can definitely work together. Just so you know, in case you've just joined, the noise has started. Did you hear that? My African grey is doing sirens and whistles and fireworks. So enjoy. That's all I can say.
I'm looking forward to him to saying stuff that he's not meant to say that you've said at some point beforehand.
No, he doesn't do that. He just says he insists on calling me a good boy. So every time I've said something and there's quiet, he'll say good boy.
Good boy. He obviously doesn't listen to your pronouns, obviously.
No. He doesn't listen to anything I say. It's a very good boy.
Wicked. Okay, so tell me a bit more about your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, so I started originally with PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in Dubai around 2012. They basically gathered a global group of people. We were relocated to New York, and they asked us to put together what this new concept of diversity and inclusion and also well-being meant for our people internally. So I was part of their first team to design the strategy for PwC. That was 250,000 people across 157 different countries at the time. So if ever there was a great place to be schooled, that was it. So a lot of what I've learned is from there. I've gone on to work in-house as a global DEI leader in the Middle East, in the US, in India, in Europe. So I was in Switzerland, came back to London after about 15 years of all this traveling, learnt a lot, appreciate a lot. And I think that's really helped to enrich the work that I do. I've worked in the fashion industry. A lot of my clients are from there currently. But I think whilst the client profiles that I work with are very, very different, the pain points are the same, right? We're all struggling with different elements and components. I don't know. There are some organizations doing it really, really well, and the majority are just trying to figure it out still. So it's big work, but it can be very meaningful work if you do it right.
Nice. Quite a journey in this space, and trying to, as you said, being thrown in the deep end at PwC is probably a good place to learn and to figure out your craft, right? And what did you do before that?
Oh gosh, so everything about me is diversity, everything, right down to my heritage, to what I did before my career, everything. So I was early days. So I didn't complete university. I had to leave, I think, at the end of the first year due to some family commitments and things beyond my control. So I somehow navigated my way into what today we would regard as private equity, but this is lots and lots of years ago. You know, I'm 50 next year, so we're talking way back when. I managed to work with some individuals who had started to invest in the property market. So I built their portfolio. It was residentials, commercials. I built small businesses within them. It was real grassroots hustle kind of experience. It was a real adventure. So I think I ran 4 businesses at the time, and developed this almighty portfolio. It was in the northeast of England. Learned a lot. Even then, if I look back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was operating with diversity and inclusion at the heart of everything. We worked with majority population teams, but if you stop and think about it, their individual needs were very different as to how they were showing up. Parents, different generations, different learning abilities, different delivery styles. So yeah, that was really exciting. I then needed a break, so I thought, that's it, I'm taking a sabbatical. And I turned up in India, and within 6 weeks got offered a job by some ex-Boeing directors who were setting up a project with the government of India in aviation and aerospace defense. Knew nothing about this. I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So did that. And then just when those projects were coming to an end, literally PwC called up via a LinkedIn search and offered me a job. And within 2 weeks of that contract finishing, I was in PwC Middle East. That's it.
That is quite a cool journey. Very cool journey. So I mean, this is me. You've done a lot of traveling by the sounds of it. Where is home? Where's originally home for you? What do you call home?
I would say right now, today, see, it's always been different, and people always ask me, where was your best place to live? And I will honestly tell you, I've been a different version of myself for the better in each location. So I'm a little bit woo-woo, and I believe in like the magic of the universe. And I think the universe definitely, all my opportunities have been very serendipitous moments of, just a phone call, someone sort of mentioning my name, curiosity, organic conversations. Nothing was planned, and I applied for none of these roles. So I really do feel now, looking back, that the universe put me in these locations, and I grew and I evolved, even to the point of, about 3 years ago, I burnt out completely, to the point of no speech and no hearing for about a month or so, 6 weeks maybe. It's not I lost my voice, there was no connection. And then my next took me to Switzerland, which was entirely about healing in the mountains. Like you couldn't have, I couldn't have crafted that if I wanted to. It was just so perfectly positioned to help me get to the next level and the next version of myself. So a very long way of saying I've just been where I needed to be at the right time. And I think right now, what's good for me is my niece and nephew. I don't have children of my own, and like they are my world, and I'm a very disruptive auntie, so it's all good.
I can imagine.
Right?
Okay, let's get into this. So my first question is, what does intersectionality mean to you in workplaces?
Okay, so for me, it's a cornerstone. It's absolutely imperative to any DE&I strategy. So let's look at what intersectionality is to start with. The definition of intersectionality is how various aspects, or for me, how various aspects of a person's identity combine to create different experiences of discrimination and experiences of privilege too. And I'll talk more about that shortly. But their identity dependent in this context on, their race, their gender, their age, their faith, ability, socioeconomic backgrounds, all of these intersect to make us who we are. And my experience will be very different from your experience as a result of my social identities and what I've lived through versus you on maybe a very similar path, let's say even through progressing through school, what that may have looked like for you versus for me. In the workplace, it's imperative that we embed this into our DEI and wellbeing work. Grassroots DEI will tell you one size does not fit all. And it absolutely doesn't when you think about intersectionality. If you think about the experience of an Indian gay man versus a straight white man, very, very different, even versus a gay white man. Because you've got to think about, in this case, the Indian gay man, his social, cultural, as well as professional experiences will have molded who he is today and how he's showing up and what he's had to live through, and how we need to design solutions for him and similar individuals, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, which we hope works and sticks, because it was the easiest path to deliver on.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing there, it's about individualization of understanding backgrounds and experiences.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then my brain goes to your role at PwC, 250,000 people. How do you do that?
With some very smart people that I learned from. That's the thing about, I loved that environment. It's high pressure. It's lethal when it comes to work-life balance, but the people around you are so smart. They are designing, the future of everything in our existence, how businesses operate, how markets perform, how, workforces engage. It's really fascinating work. And I think the real anchor point that I learned there was to be globally inclusive, so everyone at the table, but locally relevant. Because the message I would have to craft and design for a UK-based workforce in the same organization, that messaging has to be tailored for a workforce in China, right? For a workforce in Germany, for a US workforce. We know that the DEI work and the DEI conversation in the US is very, very different from the UK. So therefore, that local relevancy has to be really crafted with intent to engage with people in the way that speaks to them best.
So it's more about the communication than it is. Well, obviously, the work is obviously important, but the communication is the important part in regards to like that huge scale.
On a huge scale, I think it's the first step. I also think you really need to handhold, right? Because even if I was to put in, hand you a guidebook, right, that I'm communicating to you that this is what good looks like, your interpretation of that is still very different. So step one is be globally inclusive, locally relevant. Step two is then be on the ground working with you for a set period of time to ensure that how that's rolled out is actually how it needs to be for your population. Looking at your geography's majority population, minority populations, the marginalized communities, they will look very different all around the world. They will look very similar and also very different all around the world. So I think hand holding, it's always been a big part of my career, no matter where I've worked or, whether it's been in-house or consulting, but really that's how I think good, meaningful work gets done, rather than there you go, get on with it, and it's left to your interpretation to see what that looks like, because then you will only view it from your lived experience and how that needs to be implemented, rather than how I might look at it, which is a more broader and inclusive perspective.
I had a question before I had that. So then, when you spoke about different countries, cultures, the UK, let's talk about the UK because that's where we are and probably where most of the people who listen to this are. The UK is quite a multicultural country with lots of diversity within its popularity, or in certain areas of its popularity.
In parts, yeah. In the big cities, yeah.
In the big cities, there are. In comparison, this might just be wrong because I actually don't know, but I'm saying something like India might have maybe less multicultural to them. It might be more Indian to the mix of different cultures. How do you mix that message up? Do you see what I'm trying to say? Between like some countries will have more diversity within the employee scope they have, and some will be more with less of that. How do you manage that message between somewhere which has so much variety?
I think if you look at, so for example, just looking at India, as you mentioned, they may not have as much visible diversity, but culturally there's a lot of diversity. So even in faith, please don't quote me, but I believe there are 300 plus gods in the Hindu religion, and even then, how my family observed their faith in Hinduism was different from person to person, household to household, right? So that is framing and shaping who I am. Also, the caste system in India is very different to any. I don't know that anywhere else in the world has it as deeply ingrained as India, and that makes a difference because they're very hierarchical. Right, the message that I give to the leader versus the message that I craft for, the broader population is very, very different. The engagement, right, very junior teams and very junior individuals are not going to engage. They're not going to speak up. They weren't engaged in the Q&A, so I have to draw them out of themselves. Sometimes even as simple as the devices they're given will not allow. We talked about Mentimeter earlier in a separate conversation, didn't we, about how to get people to engage virtually. If I look at India, there are some environments where they wouldn't have their mobile phone to hand. They couldn't engage with me in that way. So I have to craft differently to make sure that everyone isn't just around the table, but they're seen, heard, valued, and given a voice.
Yeah. I guess this is where my lack of knowledge is in this area, because we're talking about diversity and inclusion. It's not just a culture or a color or your heritage. It's it's not divisible, but even it's not divisible, but it's also kind of the belief systems as well, which makes an impact too. And that, to me, that makes it even harder, because in the UK there's also lots of different belief systems as well. And
let me give you another example. Shall I spice it up a little bit more for you?
Yeah, spice it up. Let's do
it. I'm third generation Kenyan of Indian heritage, raised in the UK. My lived experience is very different from a woman of similar age from India with an Indian background. And sometimes I'm not always included in very Indian communities because I'm not Indian enough, right? And then being Kenyan but British, even here, British born and raised Indians are different to my upbringing as well. So we are Indians from different geographies, but just by the fact that we're Indian does not make us the same.
And I completely understand what you're saying, 100%. It just makes it sound like it's very tough to support, because even if you look at the class system in the UK, right, white British people, we have the same thing. So then how do you as a business, I'm seeing there must be so much challenge and struggle to support all of these different, I think you said pain points earlier on. How do you be so inclusive consistently across the board for every single thing you potentially could do as a DEI pain point?
So you aim to be inclusive consistently. Those aren't being achieved very broadly. So let's not sort of, I don't want anyone listening or organizations to think, oh my God, I'm falling behind. This isn't, no, everyone's trying, but obviously the ideal place to land is that we're doing this consistently for everyone. But this is going to sound like, Sunaina, really, is that the best answer you've got? But honestly, it's so, so true. In order to get it as right as we can and deliver in the most meaningful way for everybody, is to simply go back to basics and be human, right? We need to bring empathy in. We need to bring compassion in, judgment-free environments, and honesty. So I think there's an important piece around be honest. We're learning. We're on this journey. We're not perfecting it. You know, we have good intention. I said earlier, I just ask that my clients have good intention, and that's a really good foundation to work from. So I think bringing back the real sort of human skills that we were told were soft and fluffy, bringing those back into the workplace will really help us to create safe and inclusive places where people feel they belong. Designing in the minutiae is very, very difficult, but starting with good intentions and starting somewhere by looking at intersectionality and honoring it, and then bringing, a very humanitarian sort of experience to that. That's why the human difference, right? I focus on inclusion. I focus with my clients on building the cultures where everyone wants to come together, where humans connect in the right way. So going back to basics and having those very fundamental behaviors and mindsets that create safety, that someone can say, okay, that's a great effort. I need a little bit more help here, or I need a little bit more accommodating. What could that look like? And we may not get perfect, but we've got a hell of a lot further than we are now by just not having those behaviors as embedded as they need to be in the organization. We've almost forgotten the human piece. It's like we need to bring human back into HR, literally.
Yeah. as you said, it is just about being a nice person ultimately. And if you're trying to do that, if you don't do that consistently, you're probably doing it okay. So then where's the real challenge then? Because I mean, maybe it's just people aren't nice people.
And that's not because people don't wake up and think, right, I'm going to be horrible to as many people as I can today. I don't think it's that. The second piece of why the human difference came to be is because through my experience of burnout, through learning, observing and being curious, I've learned, especially if you look at how broken our world is today, right? I truly believe humans have lost connection with themselves. So before I can even start to connect with you, I need to understand me. I need to self-reflect. I need to be honest. Where do I have privilege? Where can I advocate for others? What are the best attributes I can bring forward? Where do I need to do better? Right? Because no one's got all the answers. No one's acing this. Otherwise, our workplace environments, the world would be a very different place. But how do I start this journey? And then that's the work that predominantly we do with leaders, but also with broader workforces. Because like even in your experience, working with the leaders that you do, there is an element, I'm sure, where you're tapping into their why. Why do they do what they do? What makes them tick? What fuels them? What exhausts them? And as you start to self-reflect, honestly, that's when you realign with your purpose, your why. And then that's where you can then start doing the work to either use your privilege for good as a leader, or start to unpack curiosities, be brave, learn, and engage more meaningfully with the people around you. And all this collectively fuels healthier cultures. Privilege is not a bad word. I personally think what you don't do with that privilege, how you don't show up and try and open doors and influence better environments for others, that to me is wrong. We need to do better. We all have privilege by virtue of the fact I've got a glass of water in my hand and I am able to get online and have this session with you. I have privilege.
And there's all, I mean, I could take, I'm going to take this very briefly into this direction, because with privilege, there's people who don't like people with privilege.
Yeah.
There's a challenge the other way around as well, right? Privileged people, maybe it's probably a little bit like trying to fight each other, right?
Yes. No, but that's what I'm saying. Privilege is regarded as a bad word. And I've sat with there was a particular very, very senior leader in the C-suite. And they were a person of color. And even then, with that seat at the table with the C-suite, they still didn't see their privilege, because they knew what it took them to get there. And I remember saying to them, you have privilege too. Huh? What? And I'm like, you have privilege. And then you take them through the journey, and then they realize, yes, now how can you use that to open doors for others? How can you use that to create safe space where your team, are trusting each other? Because trust is a big black hole at the minute, right? In societies, in workplaces, in our communities, globally, trust has been absolutely annihilated. So how do you bring these very basic, again, human needs back into the workplace? You do it by putting the work in. And sometimes the work is messy, but, the reward is greater. But I think, honestly, reflecting on yourself and doing the work really is using your privilege for good.
Controversial question. It's not really controversial, but it's
on a live discussion. Thank you.
I know. Yeah, I'm afraid it's not really. It's not. It's looking at it from that privilege, looking at it from that side. Why? Why do they want? Why does that matter to them? Why? Yeah. If you're thinking about it from this privileged position, the white male or the person of power in that privilege, why should they care?
I mean, The simple answer is because it's the right thing to do. But let's go even deeper into that, right? Back in the day when this was new, imagine I'm in the Middle East and I've got these very senior leaders, male dominant, very traditional cultures, and I'm trying to explain to them why this matters, right? And I think the secret door into making this much easier, so they understood why and they believed in the difference this can make, is to find their human connection, their human story. So when we were talking about women's empowerment and gender equality in the Middle East, I would say, so do you have children? Oh yes, 2 daughters, this and what are their aspirations? And what do they want to be? And how are they going to get there? And what if they can't? And what if there's obstacles? No, not for my daughters, but why not? We have them here in this organization. So how are we going to fix that? They start thinking differently. And then you have those leaders who maybe I had a conversation with a year ago, 6 months ago, and now their daughters are entering the workplace. And now, when last week I asked you for investment for a maternity room, a nursing room, there wasn't budget, but now you've realized when your daughter's in the workplace and is struggling, all of a sudden, instead of a fridge, in the corner cupboard, we've now got a nice comfy chair, a nice room, nicely decorated, soft furnishings, water, electricity, everything. We've now got what we needed because the leaders start to understand, wow, this is human, this is us, this is the good we have to do. And as I said earlier, people don't wake up thinking, oh, I'm just going to be a not so nice person today, or I don't care about anyone. We are overwhelmed. We are exhausted. All of us. I don't care who you are. Everyone has got something going on. The World Health Organization, I think it was pre-COVID, they said that mental health will impact 1 in 4 people. I've believed it's 1 in 1 since COVID. We are all going through something at some point in time. And so I don't think that everyone's bringing their best selves forward. But if we do a little bit of work and can bring out the best in us and the best in others, isn't that where we all want to be? But also for the business, if leaders are putting in this work, if they are really reflecting on themselves, bringing out better leadership styles and leadership capabilities, when your people are happier, safe, they have a sense of belonging, they feel like they're finally seen and valued, they're more engaged. When they're more engaged, they're more productive. When they're more productive, then ultimately the business will benefit. You don't want depleted, exhausted, disengaged, disgruntled, people around you, because creativity will die in those environments. Innovation is not going to happen. And we live in a time where innovation is everything. It's a game changer. It's a deal breaker. So if you want the best out of your people, you have to do what's right, the right thing. You have to do the work on yourself, and you have to bring your best selves forward before your people can.
Yeah. 100%. I completely agree with you. I think we led into this quite nicely. I think you began to cover some of that off in the last piece around leadership and their role in DEI and intersectionality. What is their role? Apart from, is there anything more than what you just said, or what can they do to really support those people better?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, whilst it sounds hard for some, I think doing the self-reflection, educating yourself, don't rely on your marginalized, on people from marginalized communities and diverse backgrounds to educate you. It's not their role. Educate yourself and then come to the table, scratching around curiosity and having healthier conversations, but at least you've done some groundwork. You can't just expect your employees to do the work for you. So that's one, I think. But whilst you're going on that journey, I think as you start to develop your DEI capabilities, bring people in, really challenge yourself. So have you truly enabled everyone in your team around the table to have a voice? Who is getting the opportunities? Because if all the iconic moments, the iconic clients, the sexy projects are going to the same people in the team, have you really been inclusive? And sometimes, again, in this sort of, in a very depleted state, in a burnout culture, and these very tough environments that we work in, it's the path of least resistance. Rich, take this project. Rich, you did a great job. Do it again and again and again and again. Stop and challenge yourself. Has everyone had fair access to these programs? And also, when you put someone into a situation where they're getting a really nice developmental opportunity, don't assume Rich and Sunaina can both just get on with it. Rich might have done the last 5 projects, right? So you can go with it. I haven't. Right, my perspective is different. As a woman, I might have more challenges down this road. So take the time to onboard me into this role, into this opportunity in a more meaningful way to set me up for success. Because the other place where leaders fall short is they think, well, I did give Sunaina a go. All good. Yeah, but you didn't set me up for success. You didn't guide me, coach me, help me with any. I'm not saying make it easy for me. That's not what I'm saying. It's meet me where I am and help me in an equitable way. I'll do it myself, but I just need to just be set up in a different way to Rich, who's got, 6 months of experience on this project. So I think that looks very different. I think when you call your people in and you have team meetings, meaningful moments, you've got to be authentic, right? You've got to role model what you want to see from them. And you've got to lead. Yes, you're the leader. The onus is on you to catalyze this change. So authenticity, and that's not something, by the way, you can identify in yourself, right? Which only you have the ability to tell me whether I'm showing up authentically or not. I can't own that. I can't claim that, right? So show up authentically as to how that's looking for your team. And also, vulnerability is really important. And I think when you say that to leaders, they feel really uncomfortable thinking, I am not telling you about the ins and outs of my life. And rightly so. I think what leaders need to understand and get comfortable with is imagine authenticity being 2 dials. And depending on who's in the room, go in, read the room. What version of myself am I feeling safe to bring forward and is right for this setting, this audience, this team, this environment? Because safety for leaders is important too. So I think instead of leaders just backing off and not being vulnerable and not role modeling the right behaviors, think of it as dialing things up or down as you go into a room and read the room. I'm not going to tell you the ins and outs of my weekend, but I'll tell you I'm rested. I'll tell you I found balance. I can tell you about the things that speak to some of the influence I want to give to my team in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think they're really good points. My full process was what happens, because I think, turning up authentically is something which is really important. And I'm just here to understand and help. I also help other people understand. So I'm just going to throw another question out there, just because why not? But what happens if someone's authentic self isn't inclusive?
That's where they have to do
their unconscious bias actually isn't helpful.
Yeah, they're not being very conscious with their bias. And I think that's where, and this isn't a sales pitch, that's where you and I come in, right? Professionals like us, because it can be difficult work. It can be very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to even, I think, tiptoe around DEI for some leaders, because for so long, DEI has told leaders they're the problem, has told majority populations it's all your fault. And I'm not saying it's not. But we need to bring everyone in around the table now, and we need to set up a better, healthier environment for all. And there are different people that need to do different work. So there is some work you can't do alone. And you need people like you and me, whoever your chosen, partner is in this work, to sit there and guide you. So to nurture who you truly are and bring out the best in you, to show you how to deliver those capabilities in a work setting, but also to help you think about the broader change that you can influence. So really look at if you're a leader, right, you have influence. So one, on the systemic interventions within your organization, is it set up to help and support people from a benefits perspective, from an engagement perspective in an intersectional way, right? So look at health cover. Very simply, the employee assistance programs, they're not always geared up to be inclusive, because if all your counsellors on that benefit are white, English speaking only, that's not helping people. In some languages, in I speak Hindi and Punjabi, and there isn't a direct translation that I know of for mental health. It's literally mad. That's the definition. So I need to converse with someone. If, as my culture has told me, this is a taboo topic, this is, something I shouldn't be delving into, but I feel I need to see myself in the counselor that's going to take me through that journey. So that's just one example of how leaders can influence. I think leaders need to influence at the peer level as well, because you tend to see 2%, 5% of leadership teams, whether it's the most senior exec, but sort of director and above, you'll see those same names, those same faces turning up over and over again at DEI meetings, sessions, webinars. You need to hold some accountability to influence your peer level. So as well as role modeling to your team, I think role modeling to your peers and even above. We've all influenced the leader, through our careers. We've role modeled positive behaviors and influenced them to change too. It's all about tapping into that humanity, that human connection. So I think leaders, as well as looking at the teams they lead, need to look at peer and senior levels too, because that's also where they can affect change.
Yeah, there's so much, and my brain's going to like 1,000 different scenarios as you're speaking consistently, which is making it really hard to listen. But I think it's important, and there's so much work to do. And I think about the challenge that leaders have. And I don't think whether it's a male leader or whether it's any leader, I think it's understanding that. And I think I do think, unfortunately, that we put men into that title quite a lot, and white men especially. And it's not just white male leaders who struggle with that. I think everybody does, because I think we're so self-focused sometimes, and actually we need to be collectively focused and supporting everybody to progress.
I agree.
But I think it's really interesting, and I'd love to see your work in depth, like of what you actually do, because I can see all these different things, but actually seeing the work being done would probably make it way easier to understand. Look, we haven't got long left. I've got 2 more questions, and I guess the first one's quite one which could go on for a bit longer, I guess. But what are organizations doing wrong at the moment, and what's the change they could make?
I don't think they're putting the right resourcing or investment behind DEI, and even well-being for that matter, right? It's very sort of patchwork as to how different organizations, different sizes, different industries, everything are doing this. But I think the problem when you don't have the right team, when you haven't dedicated the right resources and investment into these strategies, you do it for every other strategy, but you're not doing it for these 2 strategies, means that I think what I'm seeing a lot in several of my clients, and even conversations I'm having outside, is that people are losing faith in DE&I, and I mean the workforce, the people who've always been there. ERGs, have been amped up. I'm not saying they're against DEI, I'm not saying that, but they're exhausted because the efforts within the organization have been start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. Why? Because you haven't resourced it effectively. You haven't put a dedicated line in the budget for this work. And if you have, is the budget sufficient to operate DEI for this year, next year? What does the forecasting look like? I think it's very much still knee-jerk reaction. It's the passion of the same few who've been banging that drum for who knows how long. And we still seem to get stuck in a rut. And I think to a degree, and again, not sales pitchy, but sometimes just trust the right partner. You know, it doesn't have to be me. Find someone you have chemistry with, do some groundwork. And there are different ways consultants in DEI and wellbeing can work with you, right? So they can be advisory, so they don't get there, you know, they're not hands-on, but they can guide you from a distance. They can set you up until you get your resources in place, and then help you to develop a strategy. You know, it's all about working with you to ensure that whatever you put in place is sustainable and the wheels aren't going to wobble off in 6 months' time, or it's not going to get, you know, defunded or set aside in next calendar year. I think we need consistency, we need commitment, we need investment, and the right resources. And even when I say the right resources, the people with the right experience leading this work. And again, if you have people with great intention, wonderful. Then partner with someone externally to bring in the expertise they may not currently have, and help them build the capability that they need for your business to be able to really benefit from DEI and wellbeing work.
If companies don't have budget,
yeah,
what do you say they do?
So I think you still need to assign the resource. Right? So you have consistency, and that person's agenda may look different in how they deliver and what they deliver. But I think consistency is important, because, you know, people get excited. They feel good when they've attended something. They want more of it, and then nothing. Or they do a survey or an assessment, whether it's their health or whether it's D&I, and then nothing. And that's the thing. Where there's no follow-up, where there's no next steps, is where people get disheartened. And I think even if you put the right in-house resourcing behind it, you know, find that investment, make that investment. It does not have to be in the millions to start with. Again, investing in the right advisor, right? So partner with the right person to say, okay, if this is your size, this is, you know, what we can manage in a very small budget or with a very, very small team. This is what good can look like. Because, you know, the partner that you bring in is going to have such vast experience. No, I don't think I've got more than 3 clients with the same business profile, business model, workforce size. It can be anything from 10 individuals to 6,500 plus. And everyone's solutioning looks very different. Everyone's budget is very different. But if it was for any other function of the business, you would find it. Even if you find it for laying the foundations and then understanding what you can do going forward, you would find that investment.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because my brain goes to, there's, as you said, there's wellbeing, there's leadership development, there's professional development, which all these companies have to pay out for. Is finding budget can be really difficult at that time. I'm going to ask that question again. If there is no budget at all, what do you do?
And I've got a completely different answer for you. This wasn't scripted, so I'm quite proud of myself. So I think it's Oxford Economics. There was a report done and some insights around the cost of retaining talent. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So basically, if you think about an individual who's earning, I think, £20,000, the cost of replacing that talent is actually just under £25,000, because what you have to consider is obviously, you know, the recruiting process, marketing the role, and then replacing them, their onboarding, and actually getting them starting into the role. So it's going to cost you about, I think, just under £25,000, but also 12 weeks worth of lost productivity. So you tell me, have you got budget now? Because this work is going to retain your talent. When people feel that they belong in your organization, they're not just going to stay. They're going to stay and refuel your culture. They're going to stay, be more engaged, be more productive. So tell me, I mean, and if you lose, based on that maths, if you lose, you know, 3 to 4 people in a year, that's 100,000. And you don't need that much to start off your DEI or wellbeing work. So I would say do the maths. I'll leave it there.
Look, I wanted to ask you the same question and tell me something which doesn't include budget. Because at the moment you told me stuff which has to be spent with money. It must be, what's the one thing which is free that the company can do?
No, there's a lot of things that are free, but I think, and I used to do all of them, like honestly, in the Middle East, when this was new stuff, partner with the right people, bring in the right experts, look at the network, like if depending on the market or the industry that your organization is. For example, I refer back to the fashion industry. You're networked well enough to be able to bring in voices, to be able to, sometimes if your brand is that sexy, you'll attract the right people. Unfortunately, and I'm talking sort of influencer, high profile people who, it's good for them as much as it's good for you to be there. So if there's no budget, they may be okay with it. I think look at your partnerships in the community. So there's My G Work, which is an LGBTQ plus charity, I believe, in London, but I think they may be more broader across the UK. Engage with them because you get resources. This is an example of a community. You'll get resources, I think access to videos, e-learns, all sorts of things that you can then sort of flow into your employee experience. So there are many charities. There are many partners outside in the community, maybe even in your supply chain. Maybe there are people doing good work who can then come in and speak to that good work, some strong case studies of how they've influenced change. There are free resources, but I don't want organizations to just fixate on that. They should be a complement to a well-funded, well-resourced strategy, not just, oh, well, we've got this. And that's why it's been so up and down. That's why there hasn't been steady progress. And that's why people are more disengaged, because these free efforts have not been consistent enough.
Yeah. Lots of different things there. Okay. The final question. Top 3 take-home tips.
From what? I've told you so much. Which aspect? Okay.
What's your advice? For creating advice for creating intersectionality in the workplace?
To create inclusion and be intersectional by design. Okay. First of all, and this relates to everything that I've said, be a good human. Like, it's not difficult. Be kind to yourself, right? But also do the work to bring that kindness, that compassion, that empathy out for others as well. It's not easy, I understand that, but be kind. And especially when we talk about well-being, be kind to self too. I think I would start definitely role modeling as a leader. Start putting out those behaviors that you want your team to stand by as well, that you feel will engage the diverse voices within your team, empower people, be that advocate that opens doors for them. And I would also say something that I haven't mentioned is never ever design for a community or population without the community's voice at the table, right? I am not a Black woman. I will not design for the Black community, Black, female community without their voice there. I'm not a parent. Yes, I'm a reckless auntie, but that's not the same, and it's not enough. So I've always ensured parents are at the table. I've got and I think that's also to say I've got all the experience that I've gained in 15 years, but I'm not the expert of everything. Conversations, experiences are evolving all the time. So you must have the community that you're designing for, or all the communities that you're designing for, at the table. Do not design for anyone if that's not the identity that resonates with you.
Love that. Sunaina, thank you.
Mitch, you got my name right.
I know. I was going to say, I'm finally getting your name right. I've enjoyed this. There's a lot to learn, and I feel like it's a very in-depth conversation. I know we spoke about we're going to make a shameless plug. I'm actually seeing you in person tomorrow for the second time.
Wait. Second time. We didn't really know each other the first time.
No, we didn't. It was a quick introduction. But actually now I know you, so I can say hello and get your name wrong in person. But tomorrow we're at the Let's Improve Workplace Wellbeing winter conference, annual conference, which I am part of the leadership team and helping organise and run and hosting a roundtable. But shameless plug if you do want to come along. Ryan Briggs, who has commented on post, come along, send him a message, especially if you're in the HR world, looking after wellbeing, looking after DEI, please come along.
Did we say
Other than that,
Happy International Men's Day?
No, we didn't. Yeah, Happy International Men's Day. The one I was going to say on this on this call, the one day you can be a happy man, feel empowered. Good
There we
timing.
go. There we go.
After we've told them that they are not inclusive enough, but no,
We just told them they have some work to do. That's all we told them.
Okay, perfect. But no, thank you. Where can they find you? LinkedIn?
Yeah. Yes, I have my own profile in my own name, so scribbled down that spelling, or follow The Human Difference. Please follow, engage, start up a conversation, comment. We've just, it's LinkedIn is the place, isn't it? That's where everybody is.
Yeah, perfect. Well, stay where you are. Everybody else, have a great day. Enjoy International Men's Day, and we might see you tomorrow. And if we don't, have a lovely week. And I've got another podcast on next week around performance psychology with a performance psychologist, which is going to be super exciting. Anyway, see you later. Bye-bye.